Good evening. We have just flown away from the Raf Simons Autumn Winter 19 Menswear show at the Shangri-La Hotel. Very unorthodox location for Raf Simons, normally in a basement somewhere in the 18th arrondissement, an hour out of town, club or something a little bit more rustic and edgy. This beautiful, gilded, amazing location, so already interest peaked. Second thing that I have to show you, and I don't know if you can see if it's too dark.
We'll get both of them up there.
We'll get both of them up. Ta-da-da-da. So invite is Laura Dern crying down a phone. This is from the film Blue Velvet. David Lynch is very Raf Simons. I think he's referenced him early on in his career. I can't remember when or the date. But Lynchian and Simons work very well together. So this is already very exciting. I was a little bit nervous because this in particular, Blue Velvet, David Lynch, can be incredibly cliched, and not last season, the season before, the Christian F. Raf show, I was slightly disappointed by, so I was really worried that this would be a kind of cut and paste job, but I needn't have fretted. It was very much Blue Velvet second and the clothes first. They had an intermission also in the show, I should mention. We got emailed earlier today saying, FYI, there'll be an intermission.
Don't leave.
Don't leave. Don't get up. Just sit. So that's what we did. But yes, let's talk about the fashion. So lots of long line coats. Already as soon as the first model walks, very different from last season, I would say. Lots of long single button at the neck coats, almost to the floor, all straight, basically this kind of shape, and the most wonderful hats, which can only be described as sort of horse riding hats, sort of war helmets, and then a baseball cap flap at the back with straps. So slightly equestrian, which was kind of an aesthetic that was carried throughout these long coats and chino-esque trousers. They weren't really chino, they were straight baggy leg I should say, with kind of lines and sometimes patches, but that light trouser with a darker top is quite an equestrian aesthetic, I think. I certainly don't think that's what Raf was going for, but that's what it reminded me of. And lots of charms and accessories, so on clunky shoes and big bulky rucksacks, sweet little charms, flowers, cherries, I think hearts in some cases. There were keys as well, so some jumpers had them all over, some coats had them hanging off, dripping. There were blue enamelled flowers on Macs that were belted. The best case of this was a black leather coat with black varnished cherry charms all over it, which I must have at some point in my life. So the first half of the show, very, very monochromatic, lots of neutral tones, black leathers, as I said, white creamy trousers, and then we had the intermission, which was about 5 minutes.
Yeah, nearly.
Felt like 15 of various light changes and musical interludes. That is very Lynchian, making people wait, giving people suspense. I personally felt incredibly uncomfortable and my heart was in my mouth, and I don't know why. I think I thought something ridiculous was going to happen, which isn't very Raf, but I was really on edge.
Yeah, we were all looking up to the ceiling as if water was going to fall on us, carry pig's blood, kind of whatever it may be.
I know, and I'd seen Laura Dern, who this is a picture of, physically at the Valentino show earlier this afternoon, so I knew she was in Paris. I had a hunch that she'd be at the Raf Simons show, obviously, but I thought she might be doing something, perhaps a performance, perhaps a reenactment of the scene. So the intermission was, I am yet to discover why the intermission was there and what its purpose was, other than to put us in a Lynchian type suspense. And then what followed was very similar to the first half, I will say, but with the introduction of more Raf sort of colouring. So those browns mixed with hot pinks, that not electric green, kind of electrically tealy green that we saw in the satin duchesse coats last season. And I should add that there were scarves kind of flippantly tied around the neck, and the first half these looked like the skeleton print tights you get when you're a child and dressing up as Halloween, tied around the neck and tied around the waist, and in the latter half they were brightly coloured scarves and brightly coloured ties. I could have done with just the first half of the show, I must admit, and I can't tell if that's because I was just disappointed Laura Dern didn't come out, or it just felt a little repetitive to me in the latter half. But there were a few really key looks, such as a cord, a soft kind of dusky pink cord with some charms hanging off it, Macintosh that had the front layer and the back layer up the top. That was really something, and I was very impressed with the first half. Second half I felt a little repetitive. What do you think?
So, I mean, the collection is named or described, I can't work out, it says diptych, so obviously this was, the whole idea was this play off on each other, and as we say, we weren't given any show notes. Raf didn't want to speak to press afterwards.
Yes.
So we kind of left in the dark to fumble. I agree that at first I was a bit confused about the repetition, but, you know, Raf's obviously just left Calvin Klein. He showed the Jaws collection just before, which I commented on. I remember saying, don't you think that that's just this idea of something huge and commercial coming to eat up your creativity, this huge shark killing the tiny girl? So there is that kind of thought process, and I did feel that this dark army, you know, this army of boys, of very young looking boys, walking in solitude, in order through this gilded, beautiful hall, was quite creepy, very, very much so. And then after we have this kind of intermission, suddenly it's these bright pops of colour, this hope that you quite often you don't necessarily feel with Raf. It's this hopeful thing, you know, he does quite often play off this sadness. And it was still there. These boys did look very sad in the way that they moved and their rigidity. But there was also this hope in the colour and this childlike, you know, if you got a child to choose their favourite yellow, they would have chosen the sunbright yellow that came out on a coat, the orange the same.
I think the charms added to that as well.
Yeah, and this kind of collection. Again, we've seen a lot of kind of people on the move, the idea of picking up and going. We saw at JW, I think that was also there with bringing your charms on you.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of actually very emotional metaphors in there, which sometimes, you know, Raf likes the literal reference, as we were saying earlier, and actually this felt a lot more emotional.
True.
Referencing and internal referencing.
Yeah.
Then kind of, then also having these I'm about to be killed things on the shoulders, and also knowing that most of this collection he probably didn't know he was about to leave Calvin Klein when he was designing this. Calvin Klein only got announced a month ago. He would have been working on this collection for 6 months. So I think it's quite a nice period in time to have had a collection, because there will be this change of view and this hopefulness and this sadness of not being there anymore, but then also this hopefulness of now he's got all his time free to focus on his namesake brand. I thought all of that came through.
Do you think it's quite reflective that this is quite sad? And I mean, obviously he likes Lynch, so it makes sense, but the particular imagery he's gone with are quite like disturbing scenes. And do you think it's quite telling that that was being created while he's still at Calvin, and it's kind of reflective of how unhappy he might have been?
That's what I got, and I got that from the Jaws as well. I said it in a head-to-head actually, and I think it is sad, and I think it's an incredibly hard job being a creative director anyway. You know, you hear things of Yves Saint Laurent had to have electroshock therapy because he basically lost his mind doing houses. Yeah. You know, it's an incredibly tough process, and we don't talk about the mental health of creatives enough, I think. And I think it's you pour your heart and soul into something, and then you get critiqued by 2 people sitting in a car saying, was it good?
Guilty as charged.
So, you know, I think it is really hard, but I also think one of the nice things, I think it was Autumn Winter 16, you were saying he had referenced Lynch before, that was his first collection out of Dior, so I thought that was quite lovely, and maybe even the Lynch stuff was an after, maybe it came towards the end. It didn't feel, as you said, the clothes came first, and maybe this was to the end, and a nod back to that, and a nod back to I survived leaving Dior, I survived Calvin. Who wants me next? Where am I going next?
Where am I going next? One last thing before we go. If you took away all the narrative, all the Lynchian, do you think the clothes are strong?
as I am an avid collector of Raf outerwear, and I save up all my money to get it, and it's some of my favourite things that bring me so much joy. Yes, I think so. I think the people who have newly come to appreciate his work, who like the streetwear, will be bitterly disappointed. No sneakers in sight, even though I'm sure he'll still do his Adidas collaboration in the showroom. I don't think it's going to be one of those collections that's going to get sold massively in the same way that things can fly off the shelves from other collections such as the Several collection, but I think it's really beautifully quintessentially Raf in that strong tailoring, that solemn boy, that going it alone, and that protective armour that are Raf clothes.
I absolutely agree. I think the colours and the shapes were just fantastic, and it felt like quintessential Raf, but still new.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. Okay, that's us signing off. Day 1 done. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.